Lord, I pray that you'll be with each and every one of these needs that are being presented tonight. Lord, for this young lady who's being induced in the morning, Lord, I just pray that you would give peace to her as she's getting ready to go through this experience, Lord. And I just pray that you'd be with the doctors and the nurses as they attend to her, and that this new life that's coming into this world would just be healthy, and Lord, that we'd be able to give you the glory because of the wonderful miracle of life as this takes place tomorrow. Lord, I pray that you'll be with this little boy who's recovering from surgery about a week ago. And Lord, I just pray that as they found a large tumor on the left side of his brain, Lord, I just pray that you'd be with this little boy. Lord, I pray that you'll heal his body. Pray that you'll ease any pain that he may be feeling. Be with the doctors as they try to figure out what they are the next steps are. Lord, be with the parents as I can only imagine the fear and the anxiety that must be gripping them through this. But Lord, we know that you are a God of peace, and we know that this is not something beyond your control. And Lord, I just pray that you would show yourself faithful as you always do in this situation. Lord, I pray that you'll be with this young lady with RA, Lord. I pray that you'll give the doctors and her as well wisdom and discernment as they talk about treatment options, as they consider what to do to ease this pain and to make life manageable as she goes through dealing with this issue. Lord, I just pray that you would be with her and give her comfort and peace, Lord. Lord, I pray that you be with this gentleman who's fighting cancer, Lord. I thank you for positive results recently in the latest blood tests. But Lord, I just pray that you would continue to just work in his body, that he would continue to gain strength, and Lord, that the chemo would be effective, Lord. And Lord, we certainly know the attitude that he's had through this whole thing and how he has given you glory in the midst of his suffering, Lord. I just pray that you would just be with him in this time, Lord, and be with the family. Lord, I pray that you'll be with our young friend in Derby Health and Rehab, Lord, that you'll just be with her, that you will give her peace, Lord, that you would give her comfort. Lord, I pray that you'll be with the nurses as they tend to her. And Lord, I pray that as she's in there, that the love of Jesus would shine in her life into those nurses, Lord. And Lord, she's such a faithful woman to you, Lord. And I just pray that you would bless her and that you would give her comfort in this time. Lord, I pray that you'll be with our church family who's mourning the loss of a sibling, Lord, back just today, Lord. I pray that you would that you would surround them with your loving arms, that they would feel your love and your peace come over them as they mourn this loss, Lord. And this is never an easy thing, but Lord, we know that all of these things work together for the good of those who love you. And I just pray that you would help them to see the good that can come even out of a loss of a family member, Lord. I just pray that there would be peace in their hearts, Lord. Lord, I pray for all these other needs. I pray for our missionaries that are serving abroad and domestically, Lord. I just pray that you would give them protection. Lord, I pray that you would be with the turmoil that's in this world, Lord, that you would calm everything that's going on, Lord, that you would just step in and be the God of peace in this dark, dark world, Lord. Lord, I pray that you'll be with our country and that you'd be with our leaders, that they would seek you, that you would give them wisdom and discernment, maybe even times when they aren't really seeking it, Lord. And I just pray that you would guide us tonight as we go through this study, Lord, as we look at your word and see the truth. And Lord, unfortunately, I think a lot of this stuff in here, it's our story. And I just pray that you'd help us to see that and be able to see the how you still work in spite of us, Lord. Father, I just praise you, and I pray that you would be glorified in this evening. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So tonight we're going to attempt to do all of Genesis 27 and the first 9 verses of 28. So there are 2 reasons that we need to do this, because really this is one story. And I think we have bylaws discussion the next 2 weeks. So I really don't want to stop in the middle, hopefully, and then have 2 weeks before you're able to pick it up. Because honestly, there's a lot of stuff we just have to get through, a lot of narrative that we have to get through before we can really get to a lot of the application that's associated with this story. So it's either we're going to go really, really fast and be done really early, which I don't think that's probably going to happen, or we may not get all the way through it. So I'm afraid that it's going to be difficult for us to get through it, but we will try. So we're talking about Isaac and Jacob stealing the blessing, was receiving the blessing deceitfully. And so I know that most of you know this story, but we're going to walk through it. It's very interesting. So I teach our Sunday school, our college and career class here at FBC Mulvane, and we've been walking through the book of Genesis as well. We're about 6 chapters ahead. So in our class, what we did, because you can't do things just normal all the time, we actually acted out this whole thing. So I had people walk up, we had a narrator, and we read through it, and everybody played their little part. And so I had Isaac, whoever's playing Isaac, I made them wear dark shades because he's blind. And I had somebody wear this big scarf because they were Jacob dressed up like Esau. And then somebody else had to have, I can't remember what we did with Esau, but we gave him something that made him hairy or red or something like that. And then we had, actually we had a gentleman who said, "Hey, can I be Rebecca?" And it was hilarious. So he gave the best woman voice out of the whole deal, and it was fun. So we're not going to do that tonight, even though it'd be really funny, and I'd love to do it. But this story really is broken up into 6 almost scenes. So you can actually walk through. It's almost written like a play. And I don't think that was an accident, because we have 3 of the scenes kind of leading up and we have 3 scenes kind of coming back down. So there's a nice parallelism. It's symmetrical on each side of this. And so we're going to take each of these little scenes together, and that's how we're going to kind of going to break this down tonight. So we are going to, let me see. Oh man, I went too far there. Okay, so we're going to read verses 1 through 5a. It says, "When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, 'My son.' And he answered, 'Here I am.' He said, 'Behold, I am old. I did not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. And prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die.' Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke this to his son Esau." Okay, in scene 1. Okay, so why does Isaac call Esau in? Because he decides it's time to give him the blessing, right? What's the timing? Why is now the time? He thinks he's going to die, which is funny, not funny, but it's interesting because he doesn't die for at least another 20 years. So I think there's more to this story than him just saying, I think I'm about to die. And so I kind of want to dig into that just a little bit. So I think Isaac's true intent, when you look at this, is he's hungry. His appetite has got a hold of him. He's been blinded by his appetite. It's such an awesome little thing that he's blind, but that's not really just the whole thing. His appetite for the things of this world, for the food, has blinded him to what God's will is. So I don't think that that's something that we can just gloss over and forget about. That's something we really have to look at. So he wants to eat. He's driven by his own appetite. He says, "Prepare for me delicious food such as I love." I can just see it. You got Isaac's laying there, lounged down, and because later Jacob walks in and he says he gets up or whatever. So he's laying down, probably feeling a little bit sorry for himself, right? He's blind. He's 100 years old at least at this point. So he's not a young guy. He's laying around. My guess is he's probably at this point probably a little overweight because he loves that delicious food and feeling a little bit sorry for himself. I'm just putting things in here at this point. So this is my take on this. But he said, I want something to eat. What's the best way for me to get something to eat? Hey, Esau, I love that food. That food is so good. Hey, I'll give you the blessing. I mean, it's almost like he's saying, I'll give you the blessing if you go get me some food. It's eerily similar to a previous story where Esau sold his birthright for what? A bowl of red soup. A very red soup is what it says. A bowl of soup. He sold his birthright. So you have Isaac. Now we know where he gets it from, right? The fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So you have Isaac, who's kind of willing to do the same type of thing of trade the blessing for a meal. And so, what is wrong with Isaac trying to do this? Well, Esau's not the chosen one. Who's the chosen one? It's Jacob. And it's not Esau. Isaac is trying to assert his will over God's. That's what he's trying to do. So it's very clear that Esau loved, these names, I'm going to mix them up, so just bear with me. I apologize. Isaac favored Esau, and Rebekah favored Jacob. We know that, right? And unfortunately, you're going to see in a couple chapters when you get there that really creates a really bad situation with a couple of sisters who are married to Jacob, this favoritism. So this is running in this family, and it's not a good thing. And so we see a disunified family. Notice who's here. Who's in on this scene? Esau and Isaac. Who's missing? Jacob and Rebekah. I mean, Rebekah's over here on the side kind of listening in, but she's really not in the scene. Why in the world would Isaac think that he would need to go to his son secretly to tell him to go get some game so that he may bless him? Because he knew better. He knew that Jacob was the chosen one. Jacob was the one who was to receive the blessing. And there are some who would say, well, he just didn't know. I don't buy that. That Rebekah never told him. Rebekah has this dream, before the boys are born, before any favoritism could have rooted in, has this dream that the older will serve the younger. You better believe it, she told her husband. That's crazy if she didn't. And how else would we know this story? I mean, let's think just culturally, how would stories be handed down? It's likely not mom sitting here telling the stories of the family lineage. It'd be Abraham and then Isaac. It'd be the man of the house, the leader of the family, the patriarch, who would be passing this information down. Otherwise, this part of the story might just be left out. If he never told her, or if she never told him, we likely would never have heard of this. Obviously, the Holy Spirit is in on this and is leading this, no doubt. But I think it's far-fetched to say that Isaac really didn't know that Jacob was the one who was supposed to receive the blessing. So that just makes this whole thing worse. So he is in sin because he's trying to assert his will over God's. And we notice who's listening outside the tent. Rebekah. So apparently this was also a little thing, because who else was listening just inside the tent in a previous story? Sarah, right? Sarah was listening inside the tent when the visitors came and told Abraham about the promise and said, hey, I know you're old, but in a year you're going to have a baby. And so apparently this was something that happened more often than not, maybe there was a little bit. I think the big point is this family is pretty dysfunctional, right? They have issues. Can anybody relate? Anybody have a dysfunctional family every once in a while? I think we kind of all at times have dysfunctional families. Now this one's very clear, right? This one is maybe even over the top dysfunctional. I mean, they can't even have that conversation without getting everybody together. It's not even Isaac saying, hey, I'm making the decision that I'm going to give the blessing to Esau. It's no, Esau, hey, go get some food, that delicious food that I love, and I'll give you the blessing. I'm getting old. It's time for me to give you the blessing. All right, so that's the end of scene 1. So scene 2 picks up in 5b and goes through 17. So it's a little bit of a long passage here. So here we go. So now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice, and go, bring them to me." So he went and took them, sorry, that's up in the light, and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. Okay, so a lot happened here, right? Rebekah hears about it. She goes and tells, what's the first thing she does? She goes and tells her favorite son, "Hey, they're trying to steal the Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. Is this because Jacob is all of a sudden this moral person that's worried about doing what's right? No, he's worried about getting caught. That's all he cares about is getting caught. So Jacob is simply worried about himself. And we see that throughout his entire life until God essentially breaks his hip, knocks his hip out of socket, that Jacob's worried about Jacob. And that's really all that Jacob's worried about. And we see this in full view in this story. So Jacob is most concerned with himself, and then his mother responds. This is just kind of interesting. She says, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go bring them to me." Does Rebekah really see anything wrong with what she's doing? I don't think so. I think she's blinded, just like her husband was blinded by his appetite. I think she's blinded by the end goal. What was the end goal? That her favorite son, at the end of the day, it's that her favorite son, it's not really about God's blessing. It's that her favorite son receives the blessing. Because I think if it was about doing the right thing, they would have gone and talked to Isaac. It's no, we're going to do whatever we have to do. How many times have we seen in the book of Genesis about the guy that God has chosen tries to push God's blessing and God's purpose along, only to their own downfall? Over and over and over and over again. It's the same old rinse and repeat, right? It's the same story over and over. And I wonder, part of it, is it because that obviously this really did happen, but part of it's because this is us, right? This is us over and over and over again. How many times has John tried to push the will of God on? Probably in a sinful way. If we really look at it, potentially in a sinful way. Probably more times than I even know, to be honest. And that's part of what this story is about trusting God to fulfill His promise. The whole purpose of the book of Genesis, as I've studied this, as we've been going through this, what I've come to is the whole purpose is to show God's faithfulness to His promise in spite of us. Right? The promise to fix the fall. That is the purpose. That is the promise that God gave to Adam and Eve. So I'm going to fix this. He gave it specifically to Eve, but He was giving it to both of them, to all of mankind. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make a way that we can be brought back into perfect relationship. And that's what this whole book is showing, is how God is faithful. No matter how hard these people try to mess it up with good intentions, God is faithful, and He continues to push through His promise. And that is, I think, the whole, at the end of the day, that's kind of what the point of this story is, that these people really messed up. There are no good guys in this story. There's one good guy, it's God. There's only one who is good, and it's God. There is no God is the hero. Nobody else can take the claim, can claim the hero role in this story. They're all awful, and they all show it in this story. And so, unfortunately, that's just kind of who we are, though, right? I mean, at the end of the day, this is us. And as you're going to go along, and I don't get to teach all of this stuff, so I'm just going to say it now. What I've learned through this whole thing is Jacob is our story. We are Jacob. We are the deceiver. We are all of these things that Jacob is, and God still loves us. And He seeks us. And He's relentlessly seeking us. And so as we're reading these stories, I hope that comes out in this. So Rebekah really doesn't necessarily think that what she's doing is wrong because she's blinded by what the end goal is. Does God need her help? No. No, He obviously does not need her help in accomplishing His goal, in giving the blessing to Jacob. He doesn't need her help through this. So we see that they're both willing to go to such extremes because they really think that they're helping God. Jacob, at the end of the day, while he was really worried about himself, I think he took the stories to heart a little bit more. I think Jason's talked a little bit about Jacob and Esau sitting on Grandpa Abraham's lap and listen to the stories. One of them took them to heart at least a little bit. Now, he had a really hard heart and was thinking about himself. But Esau could say, I don't care about that. Let me go out in the field. Let me go hunt some game. And he was really good at it, apparently, and could cook it really well. But I think the other thing that we have to... but they really wanted to see Jacob receive the blessing. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what they wanted to see. Notice who's featured in this scene. Who's here? Yeah, Rebekah and Jacob. Who's missing? Esau and Isaac. It's like the family just wants to function behind closed doors. Right? Why? Because they know what they're doing. I think in their heart of hearts, they know what they're doing is wrong. It's deceit. They know that doing this is not the right thing, but at the end of the day, they don't care. They want the end goal. So one last thing that in this, I just think it's kind of interesting that there are so many references to delicious food. Isaac said, delicious food. You have this adjective in here over and over again, delicious. Why? Because I really think that it's pointing to Isaac's appetite. It's still pointing back to Isaac really, really, really desired this food, and which leads us into what happens in our next section. So the next section goes from verses 18 through 29. Okay, so this is Jacob, went into his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, because the Lord your God granted me success. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him, and he said, Are you really my son Esau? He said, I am. Then he said, bring it near to me that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank, probably a lot. That's the story, it kind of seems like. So then his father Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. That last little phrase there should remind us of something. Okay, just keep that in the back of your mind, because that should be a reminder of what has just taken place. Okay, so Jacob goes in, dressed up ridiculously. He's got goat skin on the back of his neck, on his hands. He's got his brother Esau, who's probably bigger than he is. Let's just be honest. Esau was a man of the field. Jacob dwelt in the tents. So I just envision this garment just like drowning. He's drowning in this garment. It just engulfs him because he's not as big of a guy, likely. And comes in and we, elephant in the room. Who's that hairy? Who is that hairy? That goat skin feels like the man's hands and the back of his neck. I'm not going to repeat that. That wasn't nice. So we're not going to call out. But I think that kind of just shows the ridiculousness of Isaac through all of this. Right? We see. So he walks in and Jacob tells two lies. He actually tells two lies, one of the lies twice, but two separate types of lies. What's the first lie that he says? He says, I'm Esau. So he lies to his father. What's the second one? the Lord clause. So the first one, he lies to Isaac. The second one, he blasphemes the name of the Lord. I don't know. In my books, that's pretty bad. That's kind of up there from what I've read. That's not a real good idea to blaspheme the name of the Lord. But that's exactly what he does. It's tragic that they went to this length to push something that was already going to happen anyway. God, in his sovereignty, was going to take care of this. But they thought that they needed to help God out, just like his father did a couple of chapters ago with Abimelech, just like his grandfather did a few more chapters ago with Abimelech and Pharaoh. And we see it over and over again that they just feel like they've got to push the will of God along, that they have to come in and say, God, you need help on this. Let me help. Let me step in at this point. So, do we really think that Isaac is buying this lie up front? No, I don't think so. I think the man's just really hungry. And I think that's the part that it talks about, the delicious food. He keeps talking about the delicious food that I love. He was so blinded by his appetite that he was willing to throw reason out the door. Because that's really what he did. You know, I envision it what's he say? He says, Jacob walks in and says, my father, and here I am. Because obviously he likely did not have as deep of a voice as Jacob. I'm like, Because later he goes, it sounds like the voice of Jacob, but you got really hairy hands. So it must be Esau. It's got to be Esau. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And all that we're seeing is somebody who really, really, really wants to eat. So notice how Jacob refers to the Lord. When Isaac asks him, how did you get it so quickly? He says, because the Lord, your God, granted me success. Not a truer statement in this entire story than what he just said there. Jacob said, the Lord, your God. Clearly, Yahweh is not Jacob's God yet. That's pretty clear. So at least he got one thing right. At least he was honest about one thing, that he was not serving Yahweh. And I just, as I've looked at this again over the last couple of days, it sticks in my craw because it says, because Yahweh granted me success. He invoked the name of the Lord and had the gall to call out Yahweh for giving him success. How many times have we maybe thought of that? Like, oh, well, God told me this. Did God really tell you that? Or is that you speaking? Before we go and cast stones at Jacob, maybe we need to examine ourselves a little bit and realize we're probably guilty of doing the same thing. I hope not, and I pray that we don't. And I know the people in here, when you realize that you're repenting of that. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of the cross. That's the beauty of salvation, is that when we do something stupid like that, we repent and we have a loving God who's already paid the penalty for us. And he forgives us of that. But this shouldn't be taken lightly. It's not just a phrase in here. The Lord your God granted me success. So, sorry, I lost my spot. I got off on a tangent. Sorry. My poor class has to deal with that a lot. So, why does Isaac go through with the blessing? Because even after he feels his hands, it says, it's the voice of Jacob, but the hands of Esau. Why doesn't he stop there or call somebody else in to verify? What does he do instead? He continues on with the blessing. And I just, it's been convicting to me, I guess, this week of how quickly our appetite for the things of this world will allow us to compromise over and over and over again. And I know I've been harping on that, and I'm sorry, but I guess I'm talking to myself because it's really what it is. It's the passions and the worldly meals that we eat, the appetite for the things of the world that really drive this and cause this compromise. Isaac was a boy who was willing to give his life because his father told him to. Isaac's been a faithful man his entire life. He was about to go to Egypt, and the Lord told him, don't go to Egypt when the last famine happened. And he stopped. He didn't. He listened. He followed what the Lord said. He was blessed by the Lord. We saw last week, fear not, for I am with you. The Lord was on his side. Yet he compromised because he had the appetite for the things of the world. So we go through this whole thing, and eventually Isaac gives him the blessing. And I'm not trying to skip over things, but we kind of are skipping over a few things. So he says, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field. So he gives him one last test. It says, come near me so that I may kiss you, so he can smell him. I said, yep, smells like dirt. Must be Esau. Still sounds like Jacob. And you notice Jacob's words, his answer is like, I am. He says, are you really my son, Esau? Yes. Yeah, that's me. His answers get real short, real quick, because he knows that his father's onto him, I think. Or at least he's worried that his father's onto him. So he says, it smells like dirt. So he says, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. It's a good thing, right? Especially for an agricultural type of community. For people who were working in the field, the smell of dirt. Alan, dirt smells good, right? That's right. It has a good dirt has a good smell to it, right? It has a distinct smell. And so I think that's part of it. That's what he's saying, is that smell that he has. And says, may God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. He's saying, may God bless you and give you plenty. May God provide for you. And then he says, let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. He's saying, you are the chosen son. You are the one who has been chosen by God to carry on this blessing. That's what he's saying. Even though he kind of thinks he's saying it to Esau, or he does think he's saying it to Esau, he's giving this blessing and saying, you will reign over these people, in a sense. And then he says, cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. What's that remind you of? That's the blessing given to Abraham. Almost word for word. Right? That little piece would invoke the reader of Genesis to say, he's giving him the blessing of Abraham. So all the other stuff, yes, you'll have plenty, all this stuff, but that tagging there at the end, everyone who curses you will be cursed, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. That would clue everybody in to this was the Abrahamic promise, the Abrahamic blessing that was given by God. So this would be saying, almost like Isaac speaking on behalf of God, right? To who he thought was Esau, saying that the Lord is going to bless you. All right, so that's the promise. Okay, next scene, cut scene. So notice again, who's here? Sorry. Just two again, right? This time it's Isaac and Jacob. Esau's nowhere, he's out hunting, doing whatever, maybe preparing it at this point. And Rebekah's maybe hiding around the corner. We don't really know. So, all right, the next section is verses 30 through 40. It says, as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food, there's that word again, and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me. his father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I'm your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him? Yes, and he shall be blessed." As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. For he took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. And with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Harsh words. Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac, his father, answered and said to him, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." So this is a very dramatic scene that takes place right here. So Jacob exits the stage, and shortly after that, Esau comes in. Isaac's sitting there lounged back, nice full belly. He just had his goat, probably half asleep, to be honest. You know, he's had plenty to eat. He's full. He had this delicious food. How do you enter Esau walking into the tent? Man, that chest is out. He is ready to go. He's like, "I'm going to get mine." He's walking in so confidently, like, "Here I am. Get up, Dad. Let's eat. Let's eat. It's time for you to bless me." And then he says, "Who are you?" Can you imagine how deflating that must have been for Esau? I mean, just to see him all puffed up, his chest huge, and then just him collapse on himself. No doubt, completely collapsed. He knew something had happened at this point. So, how does Isaac react to the news? After he figures out, he trembles violently. Why does he tremble violently? He realizes what's happened. And I think, now, I don't want to read more into this than what's there, so bear with me. Maybe he realized, maybe this was God's conviction coming upon him. And maybe he realized, I gave the blessing to the right one in spite of me. I pronounced the blessing on Jacob, God's chosen one, and he trembled violently. He was shaken to his core. Now again, I don't want to read more into that than what's there. So take that for what it's worth. We do see Isaac later seem to have a repentant heart. So I think it's plausible that at that point he realized, well, first of all, he did realize the mistake that he'd made, but I think he also realized what mistake he really had tried to make and how God still stepped in and showed himself once again faithful to keep the promise that he has made. So Esau reacts to the news that his brother has stolen the blessing from him by saying what? He says, "Bless me, Father." And it talks about how he cries. Remember, Esau is this guy of the field, right? He's a hunter. He's a big, burly guy. Big, burly guys don't cry pretty, right? It says that he raises, he lifts up, what does it say? Let me get the words exactly right here. He cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. This is one of those that you watch the movie and you hear somebody cry and everything stops. Like the birds stop chirping, everything stops. That type of cry is, I think, what we're hearing here. Like he's yelling, just he realizes what has happened and he loses control, right? He has this great and bitter cry. So he talks about how Jacob stole his blessing. Was it Esau's blessing to begin with? It was never Esau's blessing. So Esau's wrong there. He's clearly wrong. He doesn't have he's clueless. Once again, all those stories that Grandpa told about God's promise, that he said, and just took them and flippantly and just said, whatever, and didn't pay attention to them. He's realizing the gravity of that. The blessing of the Lord, which, hey, Dad's God's blessed man, so I'm the firstborn, I'm going to get it. He even walks in, Esau, you're firstborn. But God has shown, it's being revealed to him that he's not the chosen one. So he says it was stolen from him, but we have to remember it was never his to begin with. So what does the name Jacob mean? Deceiver, usurper, yes. So heel grabber is what it meant, and it was a playful word, right? So that's what they gave him the name because, you remember the story, Jacob was grabbing Esau's heel as they came out of the womb. It's significant because we know of the significance, but at the time, no real significance to that, right? It's a cute little story. Oh, we're going to name him Jacob. He's the heel grabber. Now, it's come to find out that this name actually fits him pretty well because it's come to known as the deceiver, the usurper, basically a cheat, right? That's who Jacob is. And so he says, he's cheated me these 2 times. And what's kind of interesting to me is when he says he's cheated me these 2 times, you don't see Isaac say, wait, what? He cheated you? When? It was pretty well known, I think, amongst the family that Esau had sold his birthright to Jacob. So it goes again back to the point where Isaac knew better than to try to give the blessing to Esau. So we're seeing again, just on and on, that Isaac knew what he was doing was wrong. And so now he violently shakes because of I really do kind of think it's the revelation of the mistake that he's made, and I think it could be the conviction of God coming on him and realizing what he's really done. So you look at, what does Esau have left to do? All Esau has left to do is beg, right? You look at the progression. It says, have you not reserved a blessing for me? And then he says, have you not one blessing? Bless me, even me also. It just gets progressively worse and kind of sadder and sadder as you go. It's like you have this guy that really thinks he deserves something, and he realizes he's not going to get it, and he just gets more pathetic and more pathetic and more pathetic in his cry. And so what ultimately happens? Well, he gets what many people call the anti-blessing. Let's look at this. It says, behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be. Exact opposite of what he had said to his brother, right? And away from the dew of heaven and on high. Exact opposite. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. Again, the exact opposite. And you shall grow restless. And then he says, but then you will go, when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So there is a little bit of a glimmer of hope there that at some point he's not always going to serve his brother. But this is really awful. I mean, count me out. I don't want that kind of blessing. If that's all you got, at that point, if I was Esau, I'd be like, never mind. I'm good. Thanks, Dad. And just walk out the door. But Isaac had already said what's said. He said earlier, yes, and he shall be blessed when referring to Jacob. So when he said this, it meant something. It meant that what he said, he was, again, speaking on behalf of God. This was the blessing, and in this case, the anti-blessing from God. So this was God really pronouncing judgment on Esau, who was not his chosen seed bearer. Right? That's all. This whole story is following the seed of the woman, right? That ultimately leads to Christ. That's the lineage that we're following through all of this. So Esau is becoming aware of the fact that he is not the chosen seed. That all those stories really didn't matter. I'm reminded in Scripture where it says that many will be at the gates saying, Lord, Lord. But he will answer, I never knew you. That is what Esau's experiencing right now. At the end of the day, that is what he's experiencing. I never knew you. Now, there will come a time when it's too late for someone to accept Christ. Right? There comes a time. You can't do it at the gates of heaven, banging on the door. Let me in. God, I went to church every Sunday. I did this. I served in this ministry. I did this. I gave faithfully. But if he says, I never knew you, it's too late. Listen to the call of God on your life and respond today. That's important that we respond today. Okay, so we're going to move on real quickly. I'm sorry. We're almost going to make it. All right, verses 41 through 45. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to him, the days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Again, listen to me. Do what I say. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother, in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? So, what happens when we sin? There are consequences, right? There are always consequences to sin. Now, fortunately, we have been covered by the blood of Christ, and so we are not punished because of that. We're not under God's wrath because of that, but there are consequences. That punishment has been paid by the blood of Jesus. That's the beauty of it, but there are still consequences. And we see Jacob, who even though God's not really his God yet, he is still God's chosen man. And he's living under the blessing of God. There are consequences of this. What does Rebekah say? Hey, so Jacob is facing death now, right? His brother, who is much more powerful than him, is saying, I'm going to kill you. No thanks. And Rebekah, hearing about it, catches wind of it and tells him, and she says, go away for a while until his fury dies down. She's thinking for a few days. How long does this end up being? 20 years. And what happens in that time? Rebekah dies. Rebekah, because of their sin, loses her favorite son. She will never see him again. Consequences of sin. The one that she loved, she will never see again. So, it's also interesting that she said, until your brother's anger turns away from you and he forgets what you have done to him. Whose idea was this in the first place? It was hers. How did that go? Not so well. What did they gain through this whole thing? What was gained? Nothing. They gained absolutely nothing. Jacob was already the recipient of the blessing. So their deceit got them from here to here. Right? It didn't take them up here. They were already here. But look what they gave up. It cost her really the love of her life. She loved her husband, but her pride and joy, her favorite son, her beloved son, it cost her because of the sin. Sin has consequences. All right, going quickly, verses 46 through 28:5. It says, then Rebekah said to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. Okay, first off, Hittite women, that should remind you of what happened in the last chapter. Who did Esau marry? 2 Hittite women. That's right. So, she's right. He married the wrong people. But now she's using it as an excuse to kind of deceive her husband again. So she says, I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? A little dramatic, but She got the point across. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him, "You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Padan Aram and to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples. May he give the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojournings that God gave to Abraham." So, a couple things we see right here. Isaac, with his repentant heart, now restates the blessing and means it to its recipient this time. He gives him the blessing of Abraham that was given to Abraham, that was given to him by God. And so we see Isaac messed up, repented, and is following God's will again. So what he's telling them to do, to go marry from the land of Padan Aram, was what God had desired in the first place. Remember, where did Rebekah come from? Same place, right? So it's go back to my father's family and find a bride there, not amongst the Canaanite women. He broadens it. Not just the Hittite women, the Canaanite women. Why was that a big deal? It's not really because of a gene pool issue. It's because they served other gods. It's because they didn't follow Yahweh. Look what happened to the nation of Israel every time they intermarried with the people of the land. It didn't go well. Right? Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, what happens to him when he marries all these women? He begins to follow their gods. And it doesn't end well for Solomon. And so we see that there's a reason for this command to go there. And it was a good idea. It was good that he did that. Again, I don't know that she really needed to go and be so dramatic about it. Say, "Oh, my life is not worth living if he were to marry these women." But that's just how she is apparently. So Isaac gives the blessing, and then this one little tagged piece here. It says, "Thus Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother." Sorry, that was part of this last section there. "And now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife from there. And that as he blessed him, he directed him, 'You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women.' And that Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother and gone to Padan Aram. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac his father, Esau went to Ishmael and took as his wife, besides the wives that he had already, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the son of Nebaioth." Sounds right. Good enough. Close enough. So Esau sees that this is the end of the story. Esau sees that, oh, what I did didn't make my father happy. So there are two ways to look at it. He either said, "Well, I'm going to go marry somebody else," but I don't think that's what it really was. He's trying to earn the favor of his father. He tries to go to Ishmael, Isaac's brother, and marry there. What's the problem with that? No, Ishmael's been cut off. Ishmael is Canaanite for all intents and purposes at this point. He is part of the problem. You know, that didn't really sound the way I meant that to sound. He's not who he's supposed to go to. It was to go back to the roots, right? Go back to the land of my father. Plus, Ishmael, who was Ishmael's mother? An Egyptian woman, right? So she's not in any way really part of the seed. So I think that's Ishmael is really not. So Esau was trying to earn his way back into right standing with his father by marrying a daughter of Ishmael. Problem is, already been cut off. So more importantly, though, you can't earn your way to the blessing. Period. There is nothing that you can do to earn the blessing. You will never be able to fix things between you and God. Only God can do that. You must surrender your life to Him because Jesus is the only solution to the problem of sin. Now, I really think that that's kind of in a nutshell what this whole thing is about. Is trying to do things on our own, it doesn't go well. It requires our surrender. At the end of the day, if Rebekah had never said anything to Jacob and Isaac had come back in, God would have stepped in because that's what God does. God stepped in. Just like he did 2,000 years ago, God stepped in and came and lived a perfect life and died my death, died your death. And that's something we can rejoice in. And that's something we should be able to take with us and really have a lot of peace about. So anyway, I appreciate your attention and your time tonight. So I hope you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.